This is JCU Conversations, a podcast show from James Cook University, Singapore. Tune in as we ask experts in the industry more about their lives and their approach to success. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Let's listen to today's episode.
Hi, I'm Professor Carole-Anne Upton, Deputy Vice-Chancellor at James Cook University in Singapore. This is JCU Conversations, a podcast show where we ask experts in the industry to talk about their lives and their approach to success. We have Su-Yen Wong, Chair of the James Cook University Singapore Board, here with us today. Su-Yen holds an impressive portfolio as CEO, Board Director and Advisor to fellow CEOs, professional speaker, academic and best-selling author. She's also a great supporter of the arts, an art collector and an avid sportswoman, having completed impressive marathons, one of which took her through the Greenland ice sheet and the Arctic desert. We've had amazing conversations about what she does, her passions outside of work, and so much more. She's one busy woman, and I'm glad we could find time to chat today. Su-Yen, welcome, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me. Real pleasure.
It's great to have you here. So tell us a little bit about how you came to be here. So you started out as a musician. What an interesting beginning, and even more an intriguing twist in your career. So can you share a bit more about your journey? How did your career as a business leader really start?
So yes, I did start out as a musician. There are actually quite a lot of parallels between being a musician and a business leader, although it may not seem that intuitive. So for example, one of the things that I did for a little while was I was conducting. And as a conductor, you don't say anything, but you have to create something by having everyone on the same page, metaphorically as well as literally. And I think that's very much about what we as leaders do as well, which is how do you align everybody to get them focused in the same direction, each playing their part, their own instrument, but creating beautiful music out of that. So I moved into the business space because I actually started out my first job in marketing. After spending a few years in marketing, I said, well, maybe I should go and learn a little bit more about what this actually means. Went back to business school, and then from there moved into strategy consulting. But I do use music as a metaphor very frequently.
Yeah,
So.
I love the creativity in that as well. And the joy of the beauty of it all coming together.
Yeah.
It's really inspiring. So you've advised CEOs, you've led business transformations, you've served on multiple boards yourself. And I've read that you've even advised on the salaries of the President, the Prime Minister, and other political appointment holders in Singapore. Wow. What would you say has been the most exciting leadership moment in your career to date?
That was certainly a highlight. But I think choosing a specific leadership moment is a little bit like saying, well, who's your favorite child? Because they're all learning opportunities as well as opportunities for impact. I think if I look back, probably the most fulfilling leadership moments are those around impacting either individuals or organizations, or sometimes, if we're so fortunate at a national level, creating some form of impact. So what do I mean by that? At an individual level, it could be working with somebody that I brought in very early on in her career and seeing her a couple of decades later making partner at a professional services firm, and how you see somebody's trajectory and their life literally change as a consequence of perhaps the options and the opportunities and a lot of hard work on their part. So at an individual, that could be, I also work with leaders in terms of how they want to reinvent themselves. So that's also about how you shift and adjust. That's very impactful. At an organization level, it's about how you take an organization forward, how do you transform it, how do you enable the organization to also scale its impact. And sometimes at a national level, you mentioned looking at how the salaries were determined for the political appointment holders. It's not just the salaries, but in fact it's the metrics by which we measure each other. So that was another dimension. And the last one that I highlight is obviously the work that I did with the Singapore Institute of Directors, looking at board directors and how we raise the professionalism across the entire board director ecosystem at a national level. Of course, in the work with JCU, I'm really excited about the opportunity to work with impacting the lives of students and what that may mean in terms of a catalyst for their lives, their families, and so on. So I think it's always about creating impact of some level, regardless of whether it's an individual organization or national level.
So that's really interesting and very relevant, obviously, to what we're doing here at JCU. When you've been advising leaders in their career on how to have impact themselves by what they do, is there a piece of advice that you find yourself giving to them more than once?
I think there's a bit of a misconception that, leadership is about the title that you have or the particular role that you have. Yes, that's important element of it. But I think at the end of the day, leadership is actually about legacy. And legacy is actually about something that extends beyond ourselves. And so if we think about leadership in terms of the impact that we can have and how it's about service, how we actually serve others in support of a bigger goal, a bigger mission, a bigger objective. That, I think, is something that's quite important for leaders to grasp. It's never about us. It's about the people around us, the institutions that we serve, and the kind of legacy that through that we can create. So.
Yeah, that's a really, really helpful way of looking at things and interesting to think about that in context of a university, where we don't talk very much about service. But I think it probably captures what we're trying to do.
And I think universities are very much about service. We're about the students, we're about the staff that we work with to enable the students. But it's a whole ecosystem, it's families, right? Because you never just take the individual, they come along with everything else that comes with them. So I do think it's about, when they say legacy is sort of when you plant the trees and somebody else sits in the shade of those trees later on, right? So I think that's about what leadership is as well. So we may educate students for today to enable them to be on a path that they in turn can have this ripple effect over the course of their lives and careers as well.
Yeah. Can we talk about it's something that you... What do you do outside of work? Because I'm intrigued at I'm constantly impressed at how you manage to do so many things.
Well, as do you.
No, really. Your skill set is so wide and you are always so productive. So how do you manage that and what do you do to relax outside of work?
I think that it's about managing energy as opposed to managing time. We often talk about time management. And sure, there's some mechanics around how you do that. I find that if we're doing things that engage us, that fuels us, right? And that gives us energy. So I segment my life into a portfolio. And I'm always thinking about how I adjust that portfolio. So some of it is work-related, professional-related, but on the personal side, I have quite a wide range of interests. So when people say, well, what do you like? Well, I like music. Well, what type of music? Actually, broad range of genres. It wouldn't surprise you. So everything from jazz to classical to rock to blues to folk. It's about, to me, having a well-rounded view of the world, and that means having a relatively broad range of interests. Now, the downside of that actually means is that I'm probably not particularly a specialist in any one particular area. However, I think what I try to do is to look at how we connect the dots. So it could be connecting the dots across domains. I love looking at how music and art and business and literature and history interconnect. I also like looking at how networks connect with each other, because very often you have people in different ecosystems, but they may be in separate ecosystems. So how do you be that bridge to connect people? So I find that this fuels me, right? So it's about, I come back to managing energy.
That's amazing. So, as chair of the board here at James Cook University, and someone who's worked across global markets, what skills do you think today's students need to develop to prepare for the future in an increasingly interconnected world and making those kind of bridges and managing that energy in the way that you're talking about?
I would say there are 3 C's that I think of. The first C is critical thinking. In a world where we're bombarded by so much data, but sometimes data doesn't translate into information or insights, I think the ability to think critically is really critical. Second, I would say, is having a curiosity around lots of different things. And of course, I'm expressing my bias here, but I think having curiosity is fundamental to discovery of, as the landscape changes, how we think about solutions to problems that we haven't seen before. And the third C, I would say, is connectivity. you used the word interconnected, and I think that we are living in a world and a time that is interconnected, not just geographically. Yes, that's absolutely one aspect, but across domains as well. So being able to connect the dots, I think, is a really critical skill for students to have. So critical thinking, curiosity, and connectivity.
So 3 C's, wonderful. Do you have some advice for students who might find it difficult to do some of those things that they're not accustomed to and perhaps step out of their comfort zones? As another C.
That's a great addition. Fantastic one. And, you and I both run. And I think one of the things about running, actually many other forms of physical activity, is it really gets you out of that comfort zone. And what I find is that once you're accustomed to getting out of one comfort zone, it translates into getting out of other comfort zones, right? So I think being able to sort of push past that discomfort, you get used to it, actually. So I would say for a student who maybe says, okay, this isn't something I'm used to, give it a try. And a university is a safe space to do that, right? Give that a try, push a little bit, and you might be surprised. You might surprise yourself.
That's great. Well, if I can try and extend that analogy with running a little bit, I think this through. I agree. You get beyond your comfort zone, kind of enlarges a little bit.
Exactly.
So that's how you push yourself forward, isn't it?
Exactly.
Because you're always pushing for that next bit of discomfort to stretch a little bit further, to go a little bit faster, to run a little bit farther, to do something different.
But there's another point that I maybe jump into that, which is also don't compare. Come another C, but on the negative side. Because I think that we each walk our journey, and our starting points are all different. So for a student who's coming in and sort of saying, well, maybe I haven't had as much opportunity in this particular space, or haven't had as much exposure, you walk your own path, right, at your own pace to get there. Know that there's something you need to do to get better. We can all get better in every domain of life, but it's not by saying, well, just because so-and-so is doing this means that I need to be a carbon copy of that particular model. I think we can each walk our own path.
Yeah. So don't compare and don't compete. I know I'm going to stop the C's soon. But
we're on a roll here.
We're on a roll with the C's. Okay. Final question, I think. If you were able to travel back in time, what advice would you give to your younger self, say your 21-year-old self?
I would say that you don't need to have your entire life planned out ahead. I think it's quite tempting when you're in school to sort of think, oh, this is what my life needs to look like, and these are all the steps that I'm going to take to get there. It's good to have a direction, but be open to the path being not quite necessarily what you predicted it to be. So the analogy that I like to use is, let's say you're going to travel and you say, I want to go to this destination, but how you get to that destination might vary along the way. Be open to possibilities. It's important to have a sense of direction. Otherwise, you might end up in a completely different place. Have a sense of direction, but be open to possibilities. And you don't necessarily need to have everything planned out ahead of time. Just take that first step that is in that general direction. And when you get to that first step, then you say, well, now I'm at this location. Now, how do I move to the next destination, right? And just keep building on it. Because I think it's the world that we're living in is shifting so quickly that for my 21-year-old self, it would have been very difficult to anticipate what life in 2025 looks like, right? So it's about having that adaptability, back to that curiosity, and basically having that sense of flexibility, curiosity to be able to adapt as the situation around us shifts as well. So
that's such great advice. I think there's such a lot of pressure on students today to feel that they have to have a plan, a life plan, and that they have to kind of take the steps to get there, and life often doesn't follow those kind of plans. And I always believe that opportunities arise in the most unexpected places. But particularly if you're travelling, that's something actually we haven't talked about, is that you are an amazing traveller. You've given me some great advice while I'm constantly asking Soo-Yen, how do you manage to do all this travelling and still get up and look brilliant and do all the things you do? Soo-Yen's response is usually, I'm going to share this secret, that you have a particular talent for sleeping on planes.
I do.
But I'm sure there's more to it than that. You recently, actually, I'm going to say a bit more about your travel schedule. You recently told me that you'd done 31 airports in 32 days.
That was one particular trip, yes. Doesn't happen all the time.
What was the most memorable part of that journey, or perhaps another one for you?
The best part of the journey was not losing my luggage at any point in that trip, because I had carry-on luggage the entire time. So that's one of my tips. As long as you travel carry-on luggage, you're okay.
Well, actually, I love that you do that, because when you also are very active online, and one of the things I love is that all the things that you do, whether it's work or whether it's travel or whether it's running or whether it's art, you're very reflective about those things, and you share those thoughts online and invite people into a conversation about them very often. And one of the things that I haven't told you that I particularly appreciated was your advice on packing for that trip, which was amazing, because in the middle of it, not only were you doing all those airports and different climates and everything else, but also you ran a marathon and then went to a board meeting with hand luggage.
So, yes, I needed a bit of yes. And at the same time ensuring that I had pack it into a carry-on so that I could make all the connections. Yeah, I mean, I used to think so maybe this is a bit of advice for my 21-year-old self as well. I used to make a very big distinction between my personal self and my professional self. And my view at the time was never the twain shall meet, because, this is how I am in person, and you can be whatever you want in your professional life and personal life, and just keep those separate. However, I've come to appreciate over time, particularly as I've moved into different leadership roles, that we are holistic beings, and the people that we work with, whether it's it could be a client, a customer, a colleague, they're really trying to understand who we are as individuals. And that's one of the reasons why I've become a lot more comfortable. I think, the word of the day would be authenticity, although I think that's for others to judge, not for me to judge. But, I've become a lot more comfortable about blending, integrating multiple facets of myself, because they are part of who I am and what makes me, me.
And that's a terrific expose of one of our values at James Cook University, which is being authentic. We often don't really unpick very easily what that means, so it's really, really interesting to hear you reflect in that way. I think when I read your postings online, one of the things that it always does for me is reminds me that you can really do anything if you put your mind to it. And that trip that you did, obviously running the marathon was amazingly impressive. But I have to say that the packing was the thing that really made me think, you can do anything. That is amazing.
We can
marathon
learn
as well.
We can learn lots. We can learn. There's a lot that I'm still learning. Really
brilliant advice. So Yan, this has been a fantastic discussion, and thank you again for being here with us. Tell our listeners where they can find you online to get all these wonderful reflections.
LinkedIn's a great place, so just type my name into LinkedIn and it should come up, and look forward to engaging in a conversation with anyone who's keen on doing so.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.